This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and I am joined by Dr. Jake Jacobs, who's been on fire the last few weeks. Just killing it, Jake. So glad to have you back again. We've got two stories from your adopted second home, Arizona, right?
The land of my alma mater.
Yes.
Or should I say alma fata, because alma mater in Latin means the nourishing mother, but in this day and age, it could be the nourishing father.
Well, and let's be very blunt. The two big colleges, universities in Arizona are known for one thing and one thing only, and that is hot women. Is that not true?
That's an absolute
statement.
Truth.
Yep. Apparently, they some of the most gorgeous co-eds in the country reside in Arizona, and that's why you keep going back,
Listen,
isn't it?
In 1974, when Playboy magazine had an article about this, USC was number one, ASU was number two, but I went to Arizona State for the academics.
Yeah, you did. So speaking of Arizona, we have a real estate magnate, a man by the name of Tom Lewis, a Scottsdale real estate investor who is no longer, who's pumped millions of dollars into the university, now is pulling that because he's sick and tired of the intolerance of the radical left. Talk about this, Jake.
Well, they have a school within Arizona State called the T.W. Lewis Center, and the director, Ann Atkinson, she had the audacity to actually bring in Dennis Prager, Charlie Kirk, and who was the other gentleman? Now I forget his name. Oh, yeah, Robert Kiyosaki. Right. And they're traditionalists. They believe, they work from the Judeo-Christian worldview, presupposition worldview, and they had 600 people show up for their event. Well, within this particular school, there are 47 professors. 37 of these woke professors signed a petition demanding they not be allowed to speak on campus. So this caused this Tom Lewis.
And you got to give Lewis a lot of credit for this, right? I mean, he founded the organization in his name, and he stood up to them. He basically said, "Look," notice what he didn't do. He didn't agree with Charlie Kirk. He didn't argue that Prager's words are better or superior than anybody else's. He's just mad that you won't even listen to them. And I've pumped so much money into this organization that employs these professors that they slap me in the face by not even letting people hear what the other side has to say.
And by the way, it's interesting to note that the issue wasn't about the LGBTQ. It had nothing. It was about health management is what it was about. And they were talking about it from a biblical, scriptural perspective, the health within a relationship with God, etc. But those 37 woke professors, they're hardcore leftists. I mean, they're hardcore wokocrats. They were so intolerant. They didn't believe in the First Amendment. They said, no, we do not want them to speak on campus.
You said on something earlier, I think that is the real problem here. You mentioned that 600 people showed up. Every time the left does this, more and more kids and faculty turn out to watch. So I think that's what's really frustrating the left here. That the more they protest conservative speech, the more they try to shut them down, the bigger it grows. You've noticed this, right? Every single time Knowles at the Daily Wire, or Ben Shapiro, or Matt Walsh, when these guys show up on campus, it's all this hullabaloo, and you get 30, 40 protesters screaming their guts out, but you got 6, 7, 1,200 people in the auditorium enjoying exactly what they're seeing.
And you know what they fear? Remember, Francis Bacon once said something quite profound and simple at the same time. Knowledge is power, and these wokocrats, they fear absolute truth and knowledge.
Let's take a look at Mr. Lewis himself on tape talking about why he's doing what he's doing.
In February, the T.W. Lewis Center for Personal Development hosted an event on health, wealth, and happiness. It featured two highly polarizing conservatives, Charlie Kirk of Turning Point.
All I care about is family, reading books. For 25 hours, I stop. And I am a healthier and happier person because of it.
And commentator Dennis Prager.
You cannot be happy if you are not grateful.
Their appearance did not go over well among many faculty members of Barrett Honors College. One tweeted, "My college sold its soul to the highest bidder."
I actually voted for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama.
For 20 years, Tom Lewis, through his foundation, endowed money to Barrett Honors College. Scholarships at first, then the T.W. Lewis Center for Personal Development.
The speaker series was intended to have two purposes. The first was to teach self-awareness, leadership, and career management.
But Lewis, who is conservative, says his relationship with the Honors College started to fray when his speakers and workshops focused on what he says are traditional American values: faith, family, and freedom. Something he says rubbed faculty members the wrong way.
They were not complaining that we were being too conservative. They don't want any conservatives down there.
So shortly after the February event, Lewis decided to terminate his endowment, accusing the faculty of failing to respect free speech.
Yeah, and remind me, Jake, the topic of the conference was what?
It was health and welfare.
Welfare,
Yeah.
right? Only the progressive left would be against health and welfare. And note, this is the same left who wants welfare not in terms of personal success, but in government handouts.
Government subsidies.
And when it comes to wealth and health, they see mutilations and puberty blockers as health. So are we surprised that this is happening?
No, absolutely not. And you know, it's interesting. This Tom Lewis, is it Tim Lewis, Tom Lewis? I forget his name now. But he appears to me, he sounds like a classic liberal. He actually believes in freedom of speech, respectfully agreeing to disagree about topics and engaging in debate and discussion at the university where you learn about universal truth and universal things, which is denied by these wokeocrats.
I know you're a Judeophile. And I am too. And so you're going to get a kick out of the chutzpah of what I'm about to read you. Barrett faculty chair Jenny Dick, it's probably is probably pronounced Dyke, D-Y-C-K, but either way, it probably fits her, right? So Barrett faculty chair Jenny Dyke, Brian told a local news affiliate that she and her colleagues had an issue with the Honors College appearing to endorse the event. She stated, quote, "I don't have a problem with them speaking, but the event was being advertised in Barrett's name with Barrett's logo. We wanted to make it clear that we were not endorsing it." Now, you know, when the left shows up on campus and all these radicals, every department gets in line to give money, to support it, they want their departments advertised. One time in which this organization sponsored this, all hell breaks out. And notice that this is the chutzpah. We don't mind them speaking, but we will not endorse them speaking. If you belong to the college, right, that's the worst kind of Orwellian doublespeak.
I was just going to say, it's amazing. The perversion, what they do with language is absolutely bizarre. And they fired the woman responsible for bringing these people in. And they said, oh, no, it had nothing to do with who she brought in. Her job had been terminated because Mr. Lewis took the money away. It's not true.
Right, so Lewis fired the woman
Yeah.
who brought the conservatives that caused Lewis to take the money back.
Right.
So this is the logic, right? So let me see. Lewis, the donor, is angry. Why? Because you're trying to censor conservative speech. The woman who brought the conservatives in is now the reason that they fired her.
And by the way, she was not herself a conservative. She was
of
a
course.
classic liberal. She
'Cause
wasn't an extreme leftist. She just simply wanted a dialogue and discussion about the topic.
It's because there aren't any real conservatives at all almost left in the universities. We're going to keep, after the break here, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and finish the story, and we have another great story from Arizona to follow up. So we're back again with Jake Jacobs, and there's another twist to the story at Arizona State University, your alma mater, and that is that we have a very wealthy progressive governor in the state of Illinois who's involved. Explain this.
Well, you know, look, I am really glad that this Mr. Lewis pulled out about, I think it was $400,000. I think he gives annually $400,000 to Arizona State. I think it's a drop in the bucket when it comes to the millions and millions and billions of dollars that is in that woke world to advance the LGBTQ agenda. And one of the kingpins, it makes me think of Sly and the Family Stone. Remember the song in '71, It's a Family Affair? Well, there's a family affair going on in Illinois, and it's the Pritzker family. The governor of Illinois, his name is J.B. Pritzker, and he comes from a multi-billionaire family. In fact, they're worth $37 billion, which is $37,000 million, and they are involved in advancing the LGBTQ alphabet people wokocrat agenda across the United States. I think we have a clip with the governor, if I'm not mistaken.
I have made LGBTQ plus rights part of my campaigns and part of my belief system since I was a young boy. My mother was an activist on behalf of the LGBTQ community. She cared deeply about fighting for our democratic values, and it's something that I feel like is in my DNA. Having said that, I think the people that are standing around me and behind me today know that I've been an activist really since they've known me as an adult, marching in the Pride Parade before it was a parade, when it was truly a protest march, when Equality Illinois was the Illinois Federation for Human Rights. And we've made so much progress in this city, in this state, but there's much more to do.
So go ahead and tie this self-serving bureaucrat with what's going on at the universities in Arizona.
Okay, so the reaction at Arizona State was incredibly well. They fired somebody over it, and they're furious about it. But what's happening in Illinois with this family, I think it's important to note that the mother of the governor, she was an activist, an actually LGBT activist back in the late '60s, early '70s. She hung around with Gloria Steinem, Nancy Pelosi, Barbara Boxer, etc. Well, the daughter of this Sue, or the brother of this governor, her name is Penny Pritzker. And Penny Pritzker was the Secretary of Commerce under Barack Obama. Right. Well, people don't recognize that Barack Obama, who didn't have a pot to pee in, was actually supported by this family to become president of the United States of America. He used to hobnob with them on their yachts, etc. But there's another part of this story. The very first transgender billionaire was the cousin of the governor, Jennifer Pritzker. He's a he/she, who was Lieutenant Colonel, National Guard, who is really James. There he/she is on the left there with the governor. So this Pritzker family is involved in giving money to law schools, medical centers, from Mount Sinai to Seattle, Los Angeles. They want to give it to law schools so they can actually, through law, demand that you have to speak their doublespeak. They want to give it to the medical facilities because they know with big pharma and big corporations. I didn't realize this myself till I did research on this. Do you recognize and realize how much money is involved in the big farm, the medical industrial complex when it comes to double mastectomies and bottom surgeries and chin alterations and feminization of the face? I never realized that it literally is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, where they're transforming hospitals across America to and actually facilitate this gender queer movement in the country.
And we did a story a couple of weeks ago about how Catholic network hospitals are surreptitiously doing these surgeries without telling the diocese or the Vatican, just quietly taking money from big pharma to buy big machines that help mutilate children, and all under the radar. It's unbelievable. So your point is well taken. Go back one more time of that picture of the two of them. This is freaking me out, Jake. It's the same person in a wig, isn't it? Come on, seriously. It is exactly the same dude, isn't it? I don't believe for 1 second that's a second.
God.
Isn't it?
No, but it is. That's Jennifer. Actually, that's James. That's James.
Now called Jennifer.
Yes.
That is the creepiest thing. 100 years ago, they put you in a sanatorium for that. It's just.
Dude, it's a family affair.
It's creepy. It is absolutely
now think
creepy.
of this. This family was the family responsible for getting Barack Obama, who's hanging around with Bill Ayers and Bernardine Doran, these radical leftist Marxists. This is what's behind this movement. And those dollars, they speak volumes in law schools, in medical centers, in high schools. The curriculum that's been created by, passed by this governor of Illinois, the K through 12 curriculum comes from his endorsement.
And don't forget, you mentioned the law multiple times. This is the same Barack Obama who's now arguing that the Supreme Court is illegitimate. There's a retired Harvard Marxist law professor, very famous, by the name Tushnet, who just came, well, I know there's that. You can't make that up either, who actually came out today and said that Joe Biden should ignore and counteract the decisions of the MAGA court, literally calling for Biden become an emperor to face off against and to override what he considers to be a MAGA court. We have another story here, Jake, that feeds right into this as well, and also from your adoptive state of Arizona. Former Arizona school counselor says she was advised to keep students' transgender status away from parents. Now, there's a lot of stories like this. This is not a one-off. This is not an anomaly.
Yeah.
We know from state to state to state, including in legislation. Places like New York is pushing legislation now. It's already passed that will make it criminal to release the gender status of public school kids unless the child himself or herself gives permission to the parents. That's another. Notice in New York, we did this last week. The children, the 8-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 5-year-old, they decide what their parents will know, not what the parents will know because they are the children.
Right. And as you know, going to the Tavistock case in England and other cases, if you don't affirm the child, you are automatically assumed to be transphobic. Now, it would be like if you don't affirm a child with anorexia, or a child with, there's that disease where you want to cut off a part of your body, and if your child
body disorder.
So if you come home and you have body disorder, you're supposed to go, oh, that's okay, Suze. If you want to cut off your arm, that's fine.
And in Canada, women have been actually blinded, right?
Yes,
with bleach, with bleach.
But you follow my point is you need to, wouldn't you look at those parents and go, you're insane, you're affirming this? But when it comes to the trans queer agenda situation, if you all of a sudden say, I want to get rid of my penis, I want to get rid of my vagina, or at least as a kid, I want puberty blockers, you're supposed to go, wait a minute, maybe we should slow down here and think this through and have some maybe alternative opinions. No, you can't talk that way.
Well, you know, the completely ludicrous lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota came out a couple months ago and said, when your children tell you what they are, you must believe them. That's what makes a good parent. So the 7-year-old telling you, whatever the 7-year tells you, if I want to go to bed at midnight, I want to eat donuts and not broccoli. If I want to be a boy instead of a girl, your job as mom and dad is not, I want to cross the street against the light. I want to put my hand on the glowing burner on the stove. You just got to back off, because real parenthood means that you do what your children say to you. As far as
child abuse,
neglect is abuse, right? And so here's some bullet points about the story in Arizona, Jake, and you can comment on it. An Arizona school social worker said in an interview with the Daily Caller that she was advised by the administration to keep a student's transgender status hidden from parents. Also, Scottsdale Unified School District told the DCNF that the district focuses on building trust with parents and students and would not actively hide a child's gender. So you got the saying one thing publicly, doing another thing, and here's the last bullet point. First, all students deserve respect and support. Second, as counselors, we must ensure that parents are guiding medical decisions for their minor children in accordance with the law. It's concerning that the district is using marginalized children as a cover to justify their willful violation of parental rights. This is Cindy O'Brien at a Watchdog Institute. So we are not surprised. They will look you in the eye. These school administrators will look you in the eye, say, we're following the law. We are including parents who are major stakeholders, and then they're ordering their employees to do exactly the opposite.
Lies upon lies upon lies, deception upon deception upon deception. It's interesting, this Cindy O'Brien, and this is very common in this bizarre world of deception, is they at first will come out with anonymity. I can't never pronounce that word. Anonymous, right?
Anonymous.
You don't know their name. They're afraid. They're fearful. And she went to this parents' rights organization and said, this is actually what's happening. They're lying to you when they're telling you that the parents are aware of these things. So she was one of those whistleblowers who broke open what was happening in the Scottsdale School District.
And this is how dangerous it is. She is a social worker. What should over and above the fact that she is a social worker who actually whistle blew about their behavior, the vast majority of social workers, as you and I know, are radical progressives. Yep. Every school seems to have a social worker, and that should make you very nervous, right? The idea that you have social workers, one of the most radically leftist professions and degrees that you can get at a university, now all public schools are being staffed with social workers. Now, this has nothing to do with anything but cultural change, right? You don't need social workers. You got guidance counselors, you got teachers, you got all sorts of things there. But stocking these high schools and middle schools with social workers has only one purpose.
It's just a glorified title for grooming. This is absolute grooming. And in previous shows, you and I have talked about how, the banning of books and how they say, oh my God, you guys, you're a bunch of Nazis because we want to ban pornography. We want to ban inappropriate books in schools across America. And yet they will tell you, these liars and deceivers, these social workers, look, when you bring this book home with this pornography, well, they would use the word pornography, right? You make sure you have a book cover on it so the parents don't see it. Or we need libraries so the parents don't, so the kiddies can go to the library and find this stuff and get the information, because they're always trying to deceive the parents.
I was giving a talk down in West Bend, Wisconsin, which is kind of a suburb almost of Milwaukee. And while my talk was going on, there was a school board meeting being held at the same time. And a lot of the people who were there funneled into my talk when it was over. And the school board meeting was about books with pornographic and graphic material. And we got an update from one of the women who was there, and she said, they're going to keep all the books. They're going to keep the books in the library. They've decided that even though there's incest in some of the books, the response from the school board was, and the librarian, the superintendent, was, we have to keep that book because some kids experience incest. And we want them to feel included, literally, that there are some kids who are victims of incest. And so we have to have books that mainstream incest to make them feel comfortable and welcome. This is the argument.
Duke, how this ever got this far in America, I'll never know. This is just unbelievable. I mean, California now, they're saying because Wyoming and Missouri said, look, the he-she's, they can't run in girls' sports, right? So California says, well, we're not going to you can't use state funds to actually fly to Wyoming or fly to Missouri. Tennessee says you can't have puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones until you're 26. I think it was Nebraska said 19, and California says, well, then you can't go to those states. Right. See, we talked about law earlier. This is one of the ways in state legislatures and with good governors that we can stand up to the federal government and say, enough already. We've got to protect our children.
And speaking of all those other states, this is Arizona we're talking about. And just for the record, for people at home, under Arizona's Parents' Bill of Rights, school counselors and teachers are prohibited from withholding information from parents that a child tells them about their physical, emotional, or mental health. The law states that parents have access to any counselor's notes and educational records the school may have on the child, according to the law. And for this, if it weren't for this one surprisingly fair-minded social worker, we wouldn't even know about these lies. I mean, we know they're there, but now somebody's finally outed them. Now, the question is, are there going to be any serious consequences for the teachers and the administrators who did this?
No.
Probably not.
Not at all.
Why would you stop then?
Yep.
Right? I'll give you the last word, Jake.
Well, I'll tell you what. I want to encourage your listeners to get involved, to tell other people about the Dr. Duke Show, to tell other people about the bizarre stuff that's happening in this country, because we need American citizens, Christian citizens who are engaged and involved to help stop this, to quote the governor of Illinois, the tsunami of activism that will take your children.
Isn't that the process, though? Isn't this a tsunami? Isn't that a symbol of ecological decay? Isn't it? I mean, so when liberals use that, they're actually supporting climate change, right?
Yeah, you got it.
That's going to wrap up this show. If you have any questions, comments, or want to support the show, simply visit drdukeshow.com. For all of us here at the show, including the redoubtable Jake Jacobs, thanks for watching.
Whatever that means.